Hope everybody's having a good day. Big day. Big, huge day here at Status Coup. We have exciting election night coverage. There's a lot of channels that will have election night coverage. I would dare to say ours will be the best and most unique because, as far as I know, we are the only independent outlet that will be out there covering the election on the ground. Again, on the ground. So we'll have details about that. Of course, my camera is not in focus. Again, hang tight. Colin, maybe you could talk to people while I fix my camera.
All right, I'm talking to people. So make sure you smash that like button while we're waiting for Jordan to get back here. Helps more people see it, the more people that smash it. And comment in the stream if you can. Basically, right now, YouTube's in the engagement phase of their algorithm. So the more likes and comments we get on both videos and streams is how YouTube is like, okay, cool, we'll share this with other people and all that. And also, we've had that coverage, as you guys have seen, of Lewis and John in the field. And that is not cheap to do. So if you can, join us as a member. StatusCoup.com/join is where you do that. And you can join for $5 to $20 a month. Lewis posted a member video actually yesterday. There's another one I just uploaded, and so I'll be posting that a little bit later today as well. And I think he'll be doing one more at least. We'll find out there. And also there's the recording from the previous member call, because we do a monthly call with the members. And I upload those full recordings afterwards. And
Colin,
back.
Stay here for a second.
Oh.
I want to do a little guessing game. Who do you think I voted for today?
Oh, geez. Wait, you're like you in New York?
Yeah.
What even is there to vote for in New York? Or New Jersey, I mean.
The governor's race in New York. There's the congressional people in New York. Who do you think I voted for?
The ones that aren't... What? I don't even know.
All right. Without further ado, full screen me. I voted for Manchin and the Parliamentarian.
I remember seeing that on with generational change, right?
Yes. So I voted for Manchin and the Parliamentarian. It's an exciting. I'm very proud to vote for Joe Manchin and the Parliamentarian, and I'm also throwing my hat out. I'm throwing my hand in the ring, or hat in the ring, to be the campaign manager for 2024. Manchin, Parliamentarian. Who knows? Maybe it will be the Parliamentarian as president and Manchin as vice president. We don't know. But I'm going to try to find a way, Colin, to put this in the background so we could have it in the stream every day, because I just think it kind of encapsulates where we are politically.
We could do some redesign on your background to incorporate it.
So that's who I voted for. All right. Smash that like button. Share this live stream. We have a big day. I'm going to wait till we have more people on the stream to announce our election night coverage, but we will start tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern. I won't say what we're doing yet. Let's get more people in, so then I can announce what we're doing. We're going to have quite a show with both on-the-ground coverage and a studio show with a bunch of great guests. So smash that like button, share this live stream so we can get this out to more people. Quite a lot to get to. I do not think the headline is dramatic, because I think we're already seeing a bit of chaos happening with this election. I'm going to go through kind of what I think are the most important things to show you, and then we will get into what we're doing tonight. We're also going to take calls too through call-in, so make sure you have the call-in app downloaded, because we'll take calls from you through the call-in app in a little bit, probably closer to 1:30 Eastern, so in about 20 minutes or so. But I want to start. Let's just start with the final forecast. This is from 538, who does a lot of polling. This is their final forecast, that Republicans are slightly favored to win the Senate. I think the House is pretty much done. Republicans will take the House, but Republicans are slightly favored to win the Senate. So in their model of 100 outcomes, Republicans win 59 out of 100 times. Democrats win 41 out of 100 times. So that's 538. I want to show you because I think, not just because we have two people, Lewis and John, on the ground in Pennsylvania, but I happen to think Pennsylvania is going to be the pivotal state that decides who controls the Senate. And Colin, if we could show the Mediaite article with that section on Pennsylvania that starts in the House. Republicans don't need much. So this is from Steve Kornacki. He's MSNBC's election nerd and does a lot of the kind of polling and map stuff for them. In the House, Republicans just don't need much. So even a night that would be overall kind of disappointing to Republicans that the Democrats could point to and say, hey, we didn't do that bad, could still absolutely involve Republicans taking the House. It's that small of a margin. On the Senate side, there's just a bunch of races here that if you look at the polling average, they're within a point or two or less. Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, suddenly at the last minute here, New Hampshire seems to be falling in that category. I think for Democrats, they've got to win Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania is technically a Republican seat right now, meaning Pat Toomey is the Republican senator right now. He's retiring. So Biden won Pennsylvania. All year, Fetterman has at least until recently led in the polls. If Democrats can get Pennsylvania, it means if they blow it in, say, Georgia or Nevada, they could absorb one loss in a seat they already hold, counter it with Pennsylvania, and still hold the Senate. So I think Pennsylvania is the single most important just in terms of the math of Senate control. So then it's a good thing, right, that we have Lewis, independent journalist who's been doing a great job reporting for us, and John Farina, who was at the Capitol on January 6th, shot that incredible footage for us of the Capitol police officer, Daniel Hodges. Remember, his head was rammed into the door by the Trump mob. That was John Farina shot that for us. So tonight, I guess we could show it now, Colin. We will have a big election show starting at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So we'll have John and Lewis on the ground in Pennsylvania. John will be at the Fetterman event tonight in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Lewis will be in near Philadelphia covering the Oz event. And they will be on the ground for us while I will be in the studio with Tina Desiree Berg, Ron Placone, Kim Brown, and Walker Bragman. So we're going to have a mix of on-the-ground reporting and us all in the studio. I have been on the ground before on election nights. It is always chaotic, always exciting. So we'll be going back and forth between us in the studio and Lewis and John on the ground. As far as I know, we are the only independent progressive outlet that will be on the ground from any of the elections. So that's why we ask for your support. Super chats are always appreciated, but more specifically, becoming a member. This is very expensive to provide this on the ground reporting. John and Lewis have been out there covering the election in Pennsylvania now for 3 or 4 days, covering Fetterman events. They covered a Trump event over the weekend. They covered a Bernie rally. And of course, they're going to be there tonight, and they might have to be there for a couple of days after, which we're going to show you why in a little bit. There's a lot of, progressive, air quotes, progressive independent outlets that are doing election shows. None of them have on the ground reporters like we do. So I hope you will choose us tonight. Again, we'll start around 7 o'clock Eastern. We'll be live for several hours. We'll definitely be leaning heavily on the on the ground aspect. So we will be going to Lewis and John throughout the night. And that will definitely be exciting. So definitely tune in around 7 o'clock Eastern. And if you don't know, you can join our text list to get a text message when we're live. Because if you haven't noticed, YouTube doesn't like to notify people all the time when we are live. So join our text list. That's statuscoup.com/text, statuscoup.com/text. So you could get a text message when we're live. It does not cost you anything to join our text list. And the other thing is, if you are already a Status Coup member, you could also donate to support the cost, to help us cover the costs of this reporting trip. That is statuscoup.com/donate. statuscoup.com/donate. I'm super excited about this tonight. It's the first time we're doing like on the ground with the studio at the same time. So should be exciting. Hopefully it works technically. I think Colin has it working for us. So it'll be exciting. Now, and a reminder, in about 15, 20 minutes, I'll be taking your calls through the call-in app. So make sure you download the call-in app. That's CALLIN, search Status Coup. And that way you could call in through call-in and it'll show up on, we'll be able to air it on our YouTube show here. So I want to show you a little bit as far as what's going on in Pennsylvania here, which again, I think is going to be probably the key state. I think Georgia is also another important state. I don't think Georgia is, in Georgia, somebody has either Warnock or Herschel Walker have to get over 50% to win. If not, it goes to a runoff that would be in December. I think it is going to go off to a runoff. So Georgia and Pennsylvania are very critical. But also critical right now in Pennsylvania, the legal battles have already begun. This article is from CNN. Fetterman sues to have mail-in ballots counted, even if not signed with a valid date. Pennsylvania Democratic Senate nominee John Fetterman's campaign has gone to a federal court to try to have Pennsylvania's voters' mail-in ballots counted if they weren't signed with a valid date. The question of whether mailed ballots with incorrect or missing dates can be counted is one of the hottest voting disputes in the pivotal state leading up to Election Day, and a divided Pennsylvania Supreme Court recently ordered counties to refrain from counting mailed ballots with missing or invalid dates on their outer envelopes. But Fetterman and voters his campaign is aligned with are hoping the federal court will supersede the state court's decision. Quote, "The date instruction imposes unnecessary hurdles that eligible Pennsylvanians must clear to exercise their most fundamental right, resulting in otherwise valid votes being arbitrarily rejected without any reciprocal benefit to the Commonwealth," attorneys for Fetterman and the Democrats wrote in their lawsuit filed yesterday. Quote, "The date on a mail ballot envelope thus has no bearing on a voter's qualifications and serves no purpose other than to erect barriers to qualified voters exercising their fundamental constitutional right to vote. The unnecessary impediment violates the Civil Rights Act and the First and 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution," they wrote. Republicans have advocated for strict rules around mail-in voting that would force ballots with missing information to be rejected. Fetterman campaign is joined in its lawsuit by the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Quote, "As we fight this latest Republican attack on Americans' democratic rights, Pennsylvanians should check their ballot status to ensure their vote is counted. We are committed to using every tool at our disposal to protect Pennsylvanians' constitutional rights to participate in this election." Yeah. So basically, I don't want to go as far as to say, like, if you were around in the year 2000, remember the army of election lawyers that were hovering over those people, those campaign volunteers who were counting ballots and all the whole hanging Chad business in South Florida before the Supreme Court stole the election for George W. Bush. But I think this could be just a massive legal battle, not just in Pennsylvania, but in Georgia, potentially Arizona. The Republicans have already previewed that they have an army of lawyers already. They've already filed lawsuits to Republicans in several states. And I think you're going to see that here in the hopes of tossing ballots under the wrong date or the signature doesn't match up or whatever other bullshit Republicans want to push. Democrats, in some cases, will push their own insanity, but it's mostly on the Republican side of trying to toss ballots. So I think Pennsylvania could be ground zero for this because Pennsylvania's law under a Republican state legislature does not allow for the counting of mail-in or absentee ballots before Election Day. Pennsylvania, and I think it's only 6 or 7 other states, don't allow the counting of mail-in ballots before Election Day. So as a result of that, you're going to have, like we had in 2020, it's just Election Day votes get counted quicker because they're happening on the day. And you're going to probably tonight have Dr. Oz, with a lead early on, because Election Day votes in the last cycle, 2020 in the presidential, and now it's likely to follow, are favorable to Republicans, whereas a lot more Democrats do mail-in ballots. I believe you're going to have some candidates coming out and declaring victory tonight, before all the mail-in ballots have been counted. My guess, I could be wrong. I believe Oz is going to do that tonight in Pennsylvania. I believe that could happen in Wisconsin. It possibly could happen in Arizona too. And that could create a really violent situation. So we'll get to all that. But I want to air this clip. This is from Dan Abrams, kind of talking about this and how basically the fact that in Pennsylvania and these other states, you're going to have mail-in bats coming in later, but you already have election deniers and Trump people saying that this is somehow fraud. If there's a delay and mail-in ballots start coming in overnight or the next day, you're going to have potentially election deniers coming out and declaring victory. Let's play this clip.
Which clip is that?
The Dan Abrams one from Mediaite.
Oh, right.
Under Georgia election law, if no candidate gets more than 50% of the vote on November 8th, the Senate race will go to a runoff 4 weeks later on December 6th between the two top vote getters. For now, there is a third candidate, Libertarian Chase Oliver, who's polling at about 1.6%, and that could mean he gets enough votes to prevent either Herschel Walker or Warnock from getting to 50%, as happened in both Senate races in 2020, where there were runoffs. And then there's Pennsylvania, which according to the polls is a dead-even race between Mehmet Oz and Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. Here's the issue. For whatever reason, Pennsylvania does not allow any counting of mail-in voting until voting on Election Day has started, which means election workers will have to sort through over 1 million mail-in ballots, and that will take days to complete. That law was actually passed by the Republican state legislature in Pennsylvania in 2019. Then there's Arizona. Here's Maricopa County Board of Supervisors Bill Gates, a registered Republican, holding a press conference today to address false election narratives to preempt attacks on the integrity of Arizona's vote, which also may take several days to count.
We're not going to have final results on election night. The problem is that people out on social media and elsewhere will take the fact that we don't have final results on election night or early the next day as somehow proof of fraud or allowing that people can start, rigging the election or something like that. And that's simply not the case.
Remember that you heard him say that today, before results are in. Now, why would people think it must be finished by election night? Well, because people like Rudy Giuliani are suggesting it already.
Now, they had the results in France in 8 hours. If we can't count the vote in 8 hours, start wondering.
Well, thank you, everybody.
I will.
Putting aside that in France, they have only one election on the ballot generally, and here we have many elections on a single ballot, the only people who should be wondering after 6 hours or whatever are the ones who don't understand how our system works, what the rules are, how votes are counted. Look, if you don't like the way we count votes, push every state to allow election officials to start tabulating mail-in votes as soon as they come in. But the preemptive doubting of results, because it takes time, is either just an intentional bad faith way to question results or ignorance. If it's close, it will take time.
So that's pretty much the best breakdown I've seen, and why I made the headline, I expect election night chaos, is, again, speculation. I don't have, any evidence per se. Actually, we do have a little evidence. Colin, I just sent it to you if you have it. If you don't yet, I'll wait. But we already know. That, I will, if somebody just asked for that video, so let me put the link in the super chat if you want to watch that video. Hold on. I just put the link to that video in the super chat. But we already know, actually, that Trump plans on challenging the results in Pennsylvania. The Rolling Stone has reported this weeks ago. If you could show this, Colin. Trump plans to challenge the 2022 election starting in Philadelphia. In early September, Donald Trump welcomed a handful of Republican allies to Manhattan's Trump Tower with an urgent message. He saw a, quote, scam happening with midterm election voting in Philadelphia and elsewhere in Pennsylvania, and he wanted conservatives to do something about it. Quote, during our briefing, he was concerned that 2020 is going to happen again in 2022, says former senior Trump administration official Michael Caputo, referencing Trump's debunked assertion that voter fraud in Philadelphia helped with Pennsylvania for Joe Biden. Caputo, who attended the meeting alongside Bradford County Commissioner Doug McClinko and retired CIA officer Sam Faddis, says they had a message back to the former president. Quote, our team encouraged him to be concerned. Furthermore, I'm advising Republicans to recruit and train election observers and a team of attorneys to oversee historically problematic precincts, i.e., where Black people vote. That's what that means, historically problematic precincts. But it's not just one meeting, and it's not just Philly. In recent months, Trump has convened a series of in-person meetings and conference calls to discuss laying the groundwork to challenge the 2022 midterm election results. Four people familiar with the conversations tell Rolling Stone. In these conversations, pro-Trump groups, attorneys, Republican Party activists, and MAGA diehards often discuss the type of scorched earth legal tactics they could deploy. And they've gamed out scenarios for how aggressively to challenge the elections, particularly ones in which a winner is not declared on election night, which is likely going to be the case in Pennsylvania, possibly Georgia, possibly Arizona. If there's any hint of doubt about the winners, the team plans to wage aggressive court campaigns and launch a media blitz. Trump himself set the blueprint for this on election night 2020, when, with the race far from decided, he went on national television to declare, quote, frankly, we did win this election. Trump has been briefed on plans in multiple states and critical races, including in Georgia, but Pennsylvania has grabbed his interest most keenly, including in the Senate contest between Fetterman and Oz. If the Republican does not win by a wide enough margin to trigger a speedy concession from Fetterman, or if the vote tally is too close on election night, Trump and other Republicans are already preparing to wage a legal war and activist crusade against the, quote, election integrity of Democratic strongholds such as Philly. Colin, if we could show the link, and by the way, smash the like button. We already have 250 people watching. Only 120 have pressed the like button. If we can get over 100 more people to press that like button, we can get the viewership up. Share this live stream. Super chats are appreciated. I'll read them at the end. So, Colin, let's play the clip. This is Trump lawyer Christina Bobb. This is basically Trump's lawyer, who, by the way, signed for the classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. She put in writing that she was certifying that the Trump had returned every document to the DOJ and FBI. So she might be in some legal trouble, since that's bullshit and they did not return everything. She signed this document in June when DOJ lawyers and FBI agents were at Mar-a-Lago and met with Trump's lawyers, and Trump's lawyers told them, yeah, everything is right here, centrally located in this storage area. Only later, it was learned that there was classified documents all over the place, including in his bedroom and office. So this is the same lawyer who put down her name and certified that Trump had returned everything. So she lied under oath. She's already met with the DOJ, but this is her on, I think it's Right Wing Broadcasting or one of these right wing channels, basically previewing the strategy.
We do have a better chance of knowing who won and who lost an election night.
I think so. I expect to know who won by like the middle of the night, maybe very, very early Wednesday morning. if we don't, and if Democrats try to extend the vote, I think they're going to have a very, very hard time doing it with any level of credibility. In 2020, they were able to do it because they claimed COVID and they had this excuse, which we all know was baloney because they had to go find more ballots and do all of their ballot harvesting. But I think that's going to be really hard to do tomorrow because everybody knows, like, you should be able, there's no reason you can't have a tally. And for a state, let's say there's 4 million voters in Michigan or Ohio, and they get through 3.5 million by midnight. You're telling me you can't get through another 500,000 in a couple hours? I mean, it's a no-brainer. There should absolutely be a result no later than like the middle of the night, early Wednesday morning.
You would think so, right?
You would think so, and I think those areas that don't have a result, it's going to look very suspicious.
Yeah. Christina Bobb joining us here.
Yeah.
So that is Trump's election. She says she's not his lawyer, but she is. She again certified in writing in June that Trump had returned the hundreds of classified documents that he didn't return. That is a calmer way of saying, yeah, we're going to have candidates coming out and declaring victory, which, by the way, we know Pete Buttigieg did that during the Iowa caucus. So this is mostly Republicans, but, you know, Democrats are not innocent here completely. You had Buttigieg come out when no data, no results had been reported for Iowa, declaring victory. And frankly, Bernie didn't. I think Bernie should have went to court and challenged that, because the media then went and ran with Pete Buttigieg won Iowa, which gave Pete a 10-point polling boost from Iowa to New Hampshire. That's why from Iowa to New Hampshire, when Buttigieg went up by 10 points in a week, he only lost by less than a point to Bernie in New Hampshire. So Pete's a cheater, and most of these Republicans are cheaters. But I don't see, to me, you know, Dr. Oz, he could pretend now, and he pretended in the last debate with Fetterman, and he's pretending on the campaign trail in his final events, and he's pretending with his ads. He's trying to paint himself as like a moderate Republican and a consensus builder and somebody who brings people together. He's a fucking hack, and he's a shapeshifter, and he's a carpetbagger because he doesn't even live in Pennsylvania. And I don't think he's very high on the morality scale. So if you think that Oz, with hundreds of millions of dollars at this point spent on his behalf, you think that it's beyond him to come out an hour or two after the polls close if he's leading by a significant margin, which he might be leading by a decent margin because, again, the mail-in ballots, which skew to Democrats, are not counted first. That's not it. That is actually the fault of the Republicans. Again, because the Republican legislature in Pennsylvania did set in law that you cannot start counting the mail-in ballots till election day. Most other states, you're allowed to start counting the mail-in and absentee ballots before before election day. So when Trump's people and all these right-wing people, and to be clear, it will be Steve Bannon, it will be Tim Pool, it will be Ben Shapiro, it will be Steven Crowder. It will be Fox News, most likely. The whole right-wing echo chamber. When they claim there's no reason that there shouldn't be a result an hour or two after the polls close. There's no reason why this should drag on. If it does drag on into the overnight or days, then something is wrong. There's fraud, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the reason is you have set the law. The Republicans have set the law that you can't count the mail-in ballots before election day. So to me, this is not about whether you support the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. I don't tell people how to vote. Obviously, people know what I think about both parties. This is just about conspiracies going around and election lies that lead to violence. We have seen January 6th. And I'm sorry to say, I worry. I am worried about potential violence because I do believe whether it's Oz, whether it's Blake Masters in Arizona, whether it's Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, I don't think Herschel Walker will be able to do it in Georgia because you need 50. You need over 50 percent to avoid a runoff there. I don't put it past any of these people to come out on election night and declare victory, even if they're up by, 1 or 2%, because they want to start the narrative. And I think Fox News is also important in this, to be honest with you. Fox News, I don't have a lot of nice things to say about Fox News, but at least in 2020, they had some integrity. They did some responsible things. They declared Arizona for Biden when it was clear that he won. They did not run with the Stop the Steal election lies. As a result, they lost a shit ton of viewers to Newsmax and that other crazy channel, OANN. They lost viewers because they were not entertaining this Stop the Steal, and they were not pushing Trump's election lies. And that hurt them badly. Do we think Fox is going to want to try that again? Just as Trump is about to announce he's running for president? You think it's beyond Fox, if we're talking about morality, to actually say, yeah, this isn't true? The mail-in ballots haven't even been counted? Yeah, I don't think so. Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, who lies every minute. I think Fox will be very, very important. I want to read this one. Hold on. I just saw a comment that I think is important. Harry, love you, Jordan. I hope you don't simp for Democrats. Harry, I love you back. I think this is a very important comment because over the last 2 years, I think there has been a real, shall I say, manipulation of online leftists, frankly, by people like Jimmy Dore, that if you provide any nuance at all, right? If you actually cover Republicans as extremists, if you cover the growing white supremacy movement in this country that is mostly coming from Republicans, if you cover the rising violent conspiracy movement in this country that is coming from the Republican Party, if you cover the rising anti-Semitism in this country, a lot of it being fomented by Republicans, if you cover that stuff, meaning you don't ignore it, like people like Jimmy Dore does, and all the network of channels that basically suck off Jimmy Dore to try and attract his audience, and those channels know who they are, that you're somehow simping for Democrats. To be clear, I don't tell people how to vote. You're not going to find video of me telling you to vote for Joe Biden, of me telling you to vote for John Fetterman, of me telling you to vote for name your Democrat. You vote for whoever you want. You want to vote third party? Vote third party. You want to vote for Republican? I mean, okay. You want to not vote? That's your choice too. I'm not here, and trust me, Status Coup would be a shit ton more profitable if we just 24/7, all we did was shit on Democrats. And we just completely ignore the Republican Party. And the channels that do that do it strategically because there's a lot more right-wingers on YouTube. And there's a huge audience out there to shit on Biden, the Democrats, the squad, Bernie, to push bullshit lies constantly, to push COVID conspiracy theories, to push election conspiracy theories, to push conspiracy theories that Nancy Pelosi's husband was hit with a hammer by his gay lover, which, by the way, Jimmy was pushing. Jimmy Dore was pushing that. I'd be a lot more profitable if I did all that. But we do something much different here. We do something, it's called nuance. I cover the Democratic Party very critically. If you watch this channel, you know that. We cover the Democratic Party very critically. Okay? But I'm not going to ignore the growing white supremacy in this country. I'm not going to ignore the growing violent conspiracy movement in this country. I'm not going to be one of these Glenn Greenwalds or Jimmy Dores that pretends January 6th, oh, just some minor thing that got out of hand. No, it was an attempted coup. It's called having integrity, and it's not usually profitable on the internet these days. But I'd rather have less viewers. I'd rather have less subscribers. I'd rather make less money. I'd rather have less Twitter followers and be able to sleep at night. So, to the person who wrote that, even though you weren't being critical, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in just playing for clicks. but we're certainly not simping for the Democratic Party. We cover elections. That's why I have John and Lewis on the ground covering these elections. You don't see either of them simping for Fetterman or Oz. You see them challenging Trump supporters, and Lewis challenged some of the more progressive voters, asking them, do you actually think John Fetterman's going to fight for you? Do you actually think the Democratic Party, even if they kept the Senate, is actually going to do the things they're saying they're going to do? So we cover both parties critically, but I'm not going to give a false equivalence either. I'm not going to sit here and pretend, oh, both are the same. They're not the same. Republicans are the ones pushing fascism. Republicans are the ones pushing election denialism. Republicans are the ones pushing every loony conspiracy that leads to violence. The Democratic Party is not doing those things. That doesn't mean the Democratic Party is your friend. That doesn't mean the Democratic Party isn't corrupt as fuck. They are. That doesn't mean the Democratic Party are warmongers. That doesn't mean the Democratic Party is a major reason why this chart is the way it is. That's in large part because of the Democratic Party. That is the economy over the last 40 years. I don't care how many fucking jobs they say have been created. I don't care what they say the unemployment rate is. I don't care what they say about GDP or the stock market. That is your bipartisan economy. It's called theft. It's called a bank robbery. The theft of your money and your futures to the top 1%, and it's bipartisan. So to be clear, as we cover elections, we're not simping for the Democrats. We're not simping for the Republicans. We're doing something called nuance. We're telling you the truth. We're going to cover the Democratic Party critically because they're corrupt and they're warmongers. And we're going to cover the Republican Party critical because they're corrupt. They are warmongers. And they're also a bunch of white supremacists and violent conspiracy theorists. And if you don't like it, don't watch. If you only want to watch so-called leftists who are manipulating you, they're also lying to you. They constantly get their facts wrong. They don't do any research, by the way. They pretend that the real reason they're outraged about Ukraine is Nazis. They don't give a fuck. If they cared so much about Nazis in Ukraine, they'd be covering the Nazis here in America. They'd be covering the white supremacy movement right here in America. They'd be covering the rise in anti-Semitism right here in America if they cared so much about Nazism in Ukraine. But they don't give a shit. That's not the real reason that you keep hearing from these people about, oh, Nazis in Ukraine, acting like all of Ukraine is Nazis, which is laughable. Anyway, I digress. I kind of went on a tangent there. I want to show a few more things, and then we'll take some calls from the viewers. The reason that the Democrats are going to lose the House, the reason that the Democrats might lose the Senate, right now it's a toss-up, but if I'm predicting, I think the Democrats are going to lose the Senate, is this. This is from ABC. Economic discontent fuels GOP hopes as midterms draw to a close. This is one final poll here. And keep those super chats coming. I'll read them at the end. Economic discontent and President Joe Biden's unpopularity continue to fuel Republican prospects in the closing days of the 2022 midterm election campaign, with the share of Americans saying they've gotten worse off financially doubling since Biden took office, according to the latest ABC News Washington Post poll. Given inflation stubbornly near a 40-year high, 80% of likely voters in the ABC Post poll call the economy a top issue in their vote for Congress. 77% say the same about inflation specifically. The Republican Party leads the Democrats by a dozen or more percentage points in trust to handle each, and by even more on another issue, crime. That is why Republicans are definitely going to take the House and possibly the Senate. And to be honest with you, it's not all Biden's fault, but most of it is. Most of it is Biden's fault, and most of it is the Democratic Party's fault, because the Democratic Party, because it is owned by the donors, we live in the United Corporations of America, the Democratic Party runs on progressive rhetoric, but they know they cannot actually execute on that progressive rhetoric because their donors do not want them to. But I'll give you a perfect example. And let me show this again. Joe Biden ran on a $15 minimum wage, which at this point is the conservative position. There is no legitimate reason why Joe Biden and the Democrats could not have passed the $15 minimum wage. They, right out of the gate, passed the COVID relief bill that had some good things in it. The $1,400 check should have been $2,000. Unemployment, a couple other things. The child tax credit was good, even though they let it expire. But they could have pushed a $15 minimum wage through that bill. They said they could not because an unelected bureaucrat who's not elected, her positions are not binding. They said the parliamentarian ruled that we could not put the $15 minimum wage in this package. Trump, for his tax cut, the $1.9 trillion tax cut that 84% of it went to wealthy people, the parliamentarian ruled against that. Trump fired the parliamentarian. Biden could have fired the parliamentarian or just completely disregarded the parliamentarian and pushed the $15 minimum wage through. It would not heal the world, but I'll tell you what, it would help a lot with this inflation right now. If that was the federal wage, that would not be a $15 minimum wage right away. It would be staggered over years, but at least the minimum wage would be higher right now. That would help in terms of these polls. Who do you trust in the economy if you had the structural change of raising the minimum wage to a $15? Biden didn't do it, citing the parliamentarian. That's bullshit. The donors did not want a $15 minimum wage. Plain and simple. That's how this country works. We live in the United Corporations of America. Public option, he ran on it, didn't do jack shit with it, could have taken executive actions, several executive actions to expand Medicare and healthcare in other ways. Biden ran on major climate legislation. Didn't do any of it. There were several executive actions he could have taken for investments in climate. Most importantly, which I think could have made a difference for the Democrats in both the Senate and the House, Biden, after a year, they set the COVID relief bill to have the child tax credit for 1 year. It was set to expire. There was one senator blocking that from continuing. Manchin. Biden did nothing. Biden acted like he was the janitor at the White House. Biden could have went on a public crusade against Joe Manchin. He could have publicly shamed him. He could have held press conferences publicly shaming him. He could have went to West Virginia. Didn't do any of those things. I don't want to hear from people, well, Jordan, if he did that, Manchin would have switched over and become a Republican. Can I ask you, what would be the difference if Manchin switched over to become a Republican? Tell me one thing that would be the difference. I'd love to know. One substantial thing that would be different if Manchin was a Republican versus a Democrat. Biden could have used the bully pulpit of the presidency, which Lyndon B. Johnson was a bastard in other ways, but he knew how to use the bully pulpit. He took people out by the knees that tried to block his legislation and his agenda. Biden could have done that, didn't. And I'm sorry that the focus keeps going in and out. Something's wrong with my camera. I got to figure it out. Sorry that it keeps going in and out. So there are plenty of things that Biden could have done and the Democrats could have done economically to help people. Then when you have inflation, on this benefit of the doubt, the inflation in this country is not Joe Biden's fault. It is a global thing. It's due to the supply chain issues. It's also due, in some part, due to the Russia-Ukraine war, but most of it is corporate price gouging. I have said over and over and over again, Biden could have publicly threatened the oil companies, if you do not lower your prices by over $1 per gallon by the end of the week, we are pulling the $15 billion in federal subsidies, i.e. free money the government gives you by the end of the week. He doesn't need Congress for that. Could have pulled the federal subsidies. Didn't do it. Democrats could have pushed legislation to ban corporations from buying back their own stock after a certain amount of profit. It wouldn't have passed. Put it on the Republicans to vote no. Put it on the Republicans to vote no. Make them explain why corporations should be able to price gouge you and then buy back their own stock to make even more money. Hell, he could have put price gaps. Yeah. Caps, excuse me. So there's plenty of things he could have done. He didn't do it because he's a pretend friend of the workers. And the donors didn't want him to do it. And both the Democrats and Republicans, most of this is theater. Most of the promises they make are theater because we live in the United Corporations of America, and they are owned and ran by the donors. And I want to show you, we're not going to play the whole thing, but I want to remind you, like 2 or 3 months ago, Colin and I took a trip. We went through Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. We covered the real economy, not the historic economic recovery bullshit Biden and the Democrats were pushing. We covered the real economy. It was very obvious if the Democrats were paying attention, if the Democrats were not listening to the bullshit overpaid consultants that are a stain on the Democratic Party, very obvious what the voters' top concern would be. They didn't listen. Here's a recap, if you've never seen it, of some of our reporting on the ground over that 8 days.
That off, according to a new CNN poll. Ben, I got to be quick with you, but final thoughts.
Sure. The January 6 hearings may be taking a break, but revelations about Donald Trump's complicity in the
House January 6 committee is getting ready for prime time,
including the actions that took place on the day of January 6th.
New developments today in the Justice Department's January.
Just everything's rising. When I first got my car, it's a 2016, it was $25 to fill up. Now it's probably close to 60, 70.
I always say to people, I only work half days. Half day to me is 12 hours.
We know what inflation is. We've lived it. We're the ones who suffer through it. This is so they can cut programs, they can raise up unemployment, and lay people off and don't pay them a living wage. We know their little game.
I had to count change the other day to put gas in my car to get my daughter to where she needed to go. Like, yeah, it's a struggle, it's a scrape.
Are we in a recession, and does the term matter?
No, we aren't, and no, it doesn't. I mean,
one sentence, that was it, huh?
Yeah, that was it. It's none of the usual criteria that real experts use says that we're in a recession right now. And what does matter? The state of the economy is what it is.
Show me where the economy is coming back, and I'll show you a population in the homeless camps that will astound you. It's sickening. There's more people coming every day.
This is the residents we're camping out, because this could be us in 2 months if we don't find housing. We could be homeless.
I mean, I don't mind starting all over, but where do you go from here? Because everywhere we go is where they want to build again, and then we got to move again. Build again, and we got to move again.
Homelessness in Philly it's ridiculous. We're looking at there being enough empty houses in Philly to house every homeless person that's here, and still have houses left over to fix up and rent or sell at market rate.
You can't afford gas to protest, and people have to work. They can't take time off of work to go and organize that way.
I'm stressed about I have to make sure we have enough money and make sure I can get gas in the car, have food and everything.
Mode.
Yeah, you're just constantly in survivor mode where it's can't think about doing anything else.
Right. You can see it was a rip-roaring 2021. The U.S. economy last year, the strongest since the Reagan administration.
If you look at our job market, consumer spending, business investment, we see signs of economic progress.
I mean, if my next 3 or 4 quarters, essentially a year, aren't good, I'm gonna have to sell. You know, I'm literally gonna have to sell a business that I've worked and killed myself 15 years for, which, was never an option for me. It's never an option.
No, there's...
Oh my God, having a family or having a kid right now seems like
impossible.
No, I just can't imagine it happening.
Yeah.
Not in my lifetime getting pregnant.
And the child tax credit, those few months you gave that and everything, all that's done been gone. And what did we do with it? We've spent it. We put it right back in the economy, and the filthy rich got every bit of it right back.
I work for state government, and a lot of state workers work more than one job because they don't make enough on the one job, which is not full-time. Working for state government, they don't make enough money, so they have to pick up another job in order to feed their families.
Are on Medicaid. A number of them qualified because they make such poor salaries.
My first year, I could tell you the name of pretty well everybody that was houseless in Morgantown, and there's no hope of doing that now. Like, there's new faces every day, it seems like, and not just one or two, like crowds.
You can't be in a recession when you've got 300,000 plus jobs being created a month and unemployment at 3.6% and spending where it is. So not in recession yet.
I struggle every day, and I have to fake it because you don't want your children to see you struggling.
Right.
You know, I grew up struggling. I grew up in this area watching my mom struggle with addiction and like not having a job, and like I had to grow up fast for my age to provide for my siblings. And it's a shame that I'm still doing it 10, 15 years later.
You hear all these people talking about how they're pro-life, right? Homelessness is one of the leading killers of people in this country.
So what you're seeing right now is police, for some reason, entering this camp. The couple houseless people are sleeping, relaxing. What is your best guess why the police are here at the moment?
My best guess would be probably some bullshit drug charge. I mean, they're also usually coming in to sweep people looking for warrants and then snatched away about 14 people, took them to jail. Many of them were out a couple days later and they just came right back here. Like, what was the point?
And now it seems like Akron is hunting its own homeless. It doesn't matter where we go. If we put up a tent, they're there tearing it down. The little bit of personal belongings and memories that we had, Akron has bulldozed over.
And they try to split us. They try to us and them, you know, and it's not a us and them. Republicans, Democrats, we're all out here. We're all working 2 jobs, and now the price of everything is even, we wasn't making it working 2 jobs. What are we supposed to do?
The confluence of a bunch of unusual events at the same time is a different mix, an unknown period during the pandemic, and there were people that needed help, there were people that needed support. Unfortunately, we're not really great at directing in a very specific way to people that need help. We wind up kind of directing it very broadly.
You would have gone smaller, done it differently.
I would have gone smaller.
You know, apparently we're all on opioids too. You know, because that's the reason we can't give out a child tax credit. But I think it was like 100,000 children were benefiting from that.
Right.
We keep getting this lip service and we're not getting anything. And at what point are we going to get fed up? I mean, with both parties. I mean, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
People are getting fed up with both parties.
Nobody could have foresaw the pandemic coming. Everybody saves for a rainy day. He's got a little nest egg saved up. That was going in 6 months, man. That was going in 6 months.
Housing is like the elephant in the room that is not getting the attention that it needs because it's the underlying factor for everything. If you're not housed, you can't do shit with your life.
Minimum wage in Philadelphia is a little over $8. Might be right around $8 an hour.
Right.
You know, like, there's no way for you to live on that.
They're not raising the minimum wage. You know,
What's the minimum wage here?
I believe it's $8.10.
But we've watched our rates increase by pennies over the past few years. You know, my rent is going up. They're increasing the rent in my 1-bedroom from $1,550, including parking and utilities, to $1,900, not including parking or utilities.
Fell in, tubs fell through the ceiling, out the bathroom, maggots forming in their utility rooms and termites.
Look at what they're voting. Look at their policies. Look at what they've done. Quit voting for a name. Quit voting for the same old because you don't want to think or look at what's happening.
This new GDP report is a bad sign, but it's not definitive, as the White House is pointing out, as Janet Yellen pointed out on Sunday on Meet the Press. The jobs numbers are great.
Exactly. All these voters and the Democrats and Republicans, it's just what, red team versus blue team? It's all the same team. It's just bread and circuses, and I'm hoping people will start to see. I'm sure they are, I mean, nothing has changed really with Biden versus Trump.
It got worse in a lot of ways.
It got worse, and I'm seeing all these fucking stickers, the I did this Biden pointing at the gas prices. It's like, they all did this. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
A statement of defiance needs to be had for those that are being displaced and put out in these streets. I'm addressing y'all directly right now. Stand up, because if you don't, you lose. We lose as a people if you do nothing. So standing up is vitally important.
All we have got is you and ourselves to get out here, and we've got to go protest. Well, that's all we've got. We don't have the money for that kind of media, for that kind of outreach. That's the reason it's going to take all of us joining our resources and our voices together.
I think we need to tell these stories, cover things, not when they're breaking, like breaking news, but when they're breaking, like shit's breaking. Society is breaking. The culture is breaking. It just makes me fucking angry. It makes me fucking angry. By the way, we did that in 8 days. We went to 3 states in 8 days. We drove, Colin, what would you say we drove? Like 1,500 miles in 8 days?
Yeah, it would have been some, because we had to do a boomerang, yeah.
You think maybe if the Democrat, come back, you think maybe if the Biden had pushed a $15 minimum wage through, or fought Manchin on the child tax credit and extended the child tax credit, or I don't know, maybe during an unprecedented pandemic expanded Medicare, that the people we interviewed would be doing a little bit better, and maybe Democrats would win the Senate, possibly the House?
Oh yeah, I don't know how much better, but it would make, especially for those people we interviewed, would make a huge difference, and would also give them that sort of hope and excitement that maybe it'll get better if they vote Democrat again, which is how that stuff used to work, of you give them something and they vote for you, rather than
right.
You threaten them that the other side will take something away unless you vote for them.
Because Biden's poll numbers, if you remember, Biden's poll numbers went through the roof after the COVID relief bill, because it's actually popular to help people. The $1,400 check, even though I thought that was a joke, was popular. Unemployment, popular. The child tax credit, wildly popular. But then, Manchin, cinema, give me a fucking break. If Biden wanted their votes, he could have got them through force. Publicly pressuring, publicly shaming, and using the entire power of the presidency, the Democratic Party, all of the groups that support you, to make them bend. All right, I'm going to read super chats in a little bit, but I want to start taking some calls. So let's go over to call-in. Colin, I might need your help because I forget how to do this. So if you want to call in to the show, go over to the call-in app. If you don't have it, download it. CALLIN. Search for Status Coup. Oh, again with a new version. I just updated this. Hold on.
I just put the link for the call-in in the super chat there when Jordan starts it.
As a reminder to folks, at 7 o'clock Eastern time, so in about 5 hours, we will be live for our election night coverage. We will be on the ground and in the studio. So Lewis will be on the ground for us. John will be on the ground for us. Lewis will be at the Oz event near Philadelphia, and John will be at the Fetterman event in Pittsburgh. So we'll be going to them live throughout our show, and I'll be in the studio. Joining me will be Tina Desiree Berg, Kim Brown, Walker Bragman, and Ron Placone. So it should be a lot of fun. Colin, could you send me the link? For some reason, again, it doesn't show up for me.
It's in the private chat here on StreamYard.
Yeah, but I can't get that on my phone.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
What's it?
Keep sharing this live stream. Appreciate the super chats. I'll be starting the call in a minute.
I just emailed it.
All right. We are live on call-in. So if you want to call into the show, head over there on the call-in app, and I will take your calls through call-in right on YouTube. Obviously, the election, if you want to talk about that. But if you want to talk about it, anything else, happy to take your calls on whatever. Let me share it. Share room. Instagram. All right. So hop over there and raise your hand to call in, and I will bring you right through. So while we're waiting for call-ins, let me read some super chats. Thank you, Charles. $5. There's a video game where you get to arrest George Bush and other war criminals. It's called Justice for All. It's on Steam. Oh my God, I'd love to play that. Is Henry Kissinger on there too? Oh, I'm going to save that. Justice for All on Steam. Let me write that down. I would love to play that game. And $25 donation through our website. Thank you so much, Anne. Again, you could donate through our website to help cover the costs of this trip in Pennsylvania. John and Lewis have been out there for days covering Fetterman versus Oz. That's statuscoup.com/donate. You could donate to our website. Christina, $25 website donation. Thank you so much, Christina. Presence, $10. Thank you so much, Presence. Humorous, $200. Oh, thank you so much, Humorous. Again, an amazing contribution, as always, from you. That's right, Jordan. You tell them you are definitely not a Republican or a Democrat. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I love your on-the-ground journalism. It's too funny to me that even when you see Fox or NBC out anywhere, they only talk to one person, not the whole crowd. Yes. And they usually show 20 seconds of what that one person has to say. So thank you so much, Humorous. Yes, we are on the ground. We speak with the people. We spoke with Trump supporters the other day. We spoke with progressives the other day who are supporting Fetterman. We've spoken with people who kind of don't like either. But we go out there and we give the microphone to the people. So very, very important. Humorous, another $5. This last rant that this man just said, me, is why I go out of my way to support these people. I appreciate that, Humorous. Humorous left another $5. Of course, only Jordan and Status Coup could actually tell everyone that goddamn freaking truth. Yeah, I'm really sick of these so-called fucking leftists on the internet who pretend to be leftists, but somehow they don't have time to cover, I don't know, the union drives happening all over the country. You would think leftists would be covering Amazon workers, Starbucks workers, Trader Joe's workers trying to unionize in this country, aside from occasionally doing a video once every 6 months. They're too busy covering COVID conspiracy theories and propping up right-wingers. Yes, Jimmy Dore is who I'm talking about, among others. Yeah, they're not interested in actually covering things that might actually help the left, that might actually help workers. What a thought. I'm tired of hearing leftists pretend that they're the real leftists when they ignore the growing white supremacy threat in this country. They ignore the violent conspiracy movement in this country. And they pretend, it doesn't matter because AOC, Bernie, like somehow AOC and Bernie is like the main reason you don't have Medicare for all. Somehow AOC and Bernie is why you don't have a $15 minimum wage. And I'm critical of them. I've been critical of them. I'm not happy how Bernie has operated under the Biden administration. I'm not happy that AOC and the squad have folded like cheap tents and not fought. But I also don't just cravenly play for clicks to put all of my concentration there and like pretend that somehow the Republicans are your friend, or pretend somehow there's not a growing white supremacy threat in this country coming from Republicans, pretend somehow that there's not a violent conspiracy movement in this country coming from Republicans, pretend that like AOC is the reason we might have nuclear war, which is laughable. It's just a joke. And a reminder, we're live on Call-In, so download the Call-In app, get over there if you want to call into the show. We got a few people listening right now, but nobody's called in yet, so feel free. If you want to call in, you could call in by using the Call-In app. Benton Animal, $1.99. Crush the duopoly. Keep up the good work. Thank you, thank you. Humorous, another $50. Holy cow. We are not in a recession. We are not in inflation. We are in a conundrum where everybody thinks that their taxes are bad. Taxes are not bad, people. Taxes are only bad when 1% of the population that holds all that money doesn't pay their taxes. Yeah, it's basically been the United Corporations of America for the last 40 years. That's why I call it the United Corporations of America, because we don't really have a country anymore. We have a multi-trillion-dollar corporate conglomerate masquerading as a government. That's the truth. Jacqueline, $15 website donation. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I really appreciate that. Mary Beth just signed up as a new Status Coup member. Thank you so much. Membership is how we grow. So if you are watching and you're not yet a Status Coup member, what is $5 to $10 a month worth to you? Now, for some people, they don't have that to support an on-the-ground independent reporting outlet, and that's okay. But if you do have $5 to $10 a month, or you could think of products or services that you spend that $5 to $10 a month that might not be necessary or might be a waste. Think about how much more on the ground reporting we could do, how many more reporters we could bring on, how many more video journalists we could bring on, how much more travel we could do if an army of people signed up for $5 to $10 a month. You might think that's not a lot. It is. It builds. So that's how we fund this on the ground reporting, through memberships. Donations obviously help too, but recurring monthly memberships is how we support this reporting. So thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate it. I think we got a member yesterday too, so let me give a shout out there. Yes, welcome. Ben signed up yesterday. So hopefully we get some more members tonight. We do have a caller, so let me take you. Charles, you're up.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Yeah, I just want to say I thought Lewis did a really good job with the on-the-ground reporting as I watched it over the weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's been doing really, really great.
He has a good personality. He does a good job handling those like Trump supporters and or even on the other side, the people that think the Democrats are going to save the day.
Yeah, I think he's been really, really good. I mean, I think he was like with the Trump people pushed back like a good amount, but also like wasn't overbearing or just trying to be a dick. And I think at the Bernie events and other things, like, yeah, he's basically, I think he could tell like there's not a ton of excitement for Fetterman. So he's asking the right questions. Like, all right, you're going to vote for him, but like, do you actually think he or the Democrats are going to do anything based on doing nothing already? So yeah, it's been really nice to see him kind of out there getting better, kind of his evolution, because he's been doing reporting for us for a few months, and he's definitely getting better on camera and asking good questions. So yeah, I'm really happy with him.
Yeah, I also like your lineup now that you have Ron on and Tina Desiree Berg and Steve Grumbine. And
yeah, we're trying to expand. We don't have like a huge amount of money. We don't, obviously we don't have corporate funding or anything like that. So I'm trying to expand as best as I can. Obviously we want to pay people like a decent amount to be on, but yeah, I love having Ron on. I feel like Ron, when he was on with Jimmy, like didn't really get to talk that much. I don't know if it was because Jimmy didn't let him talk or just like, Ron was kind of the co-host and couldn't really dominate the conversation. But I think Ron has really good takes on things. He's smart. He's very passionate about digital rights, which doesn't get a lot of coverage. So he'll actually start hosting once a week coming up soon. And obviously Tina is a badass and a great reporter. So I've loved having her more regularly. Kim Brown also hosts for us once a week, who's great. So yeah, I'm trying to make this, not the Jordan show, and kind of expand it to have more people.
What I thought was interesting about Tina is I realized she's an actor. She has a profile on IMDb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she used to be an actress.
And, yeah, Ron's a smart guy. I really like him. And yeah, Jimmy Dore. Yeah, he used to have Graham on there, and he used to have Ron, and now seems like he's burning through the co-host, I guess. But
yeah.
But Jackson, like you were talking about Jackson, I used to like him, but then he tries to come off as a leftist. But then when he said Donald Trump Jr. is a great guy, that's when he lost me. There's no way to justify that.
Kind of lost me when he started basically like looking and sounding like RT. I mean,
well, I liked RT.
No, I mean, RT America was good, but like Jackson basically has been just pushing the like Russian RT line in this whole war thing. I also think like whatever you think about the Russia-Ukraine war, when you start like posting on Twitter, like you standing next to a sign, Putin is good, debate me. Like, yeah, you kind of lose me.
Well, another place where he really lost me is that, what's it? The Schilling Institute had a conference in New York and with part with LaRoche about the green fascism, or like that seemed kind of and I thought I think Jimmy Dore also supports that too, which is kind of concerning because that would be the straw for me not watching Jimmy Dore anymore, because I still watch Jimmy Dore.
Listen, people can watch whoever they want, but I think they need to really look at trends. I think they really should start looking at the comments under these people's videos, see the type of people that are in their chats, because it's growing more by the day to just be straight right wingers. And the very few times that Jimmy ever does a video criticizing a Republican, I mean, almost every time the comments turn on him. That doesn't mean that there are no leftists who watch people like Jimmy, but more and more, it's a growingly right-wing audience. I've started to see more people online start saying, yeah, I used to watch Jimmy, but it became too much for me. And I think at the end of the day, when people try to fit a square peg into a round hole for every argument, meaning no matter what the story is, let's bash the Democrats. I just think that's intellectually disingenuous. And that's coming from somebody who is not a Democrat, doesn't support Democrats. I mean, I voted for Democrats. I voted for third party. Like, I vote based on the election and the circumstances. I'm not an absolutist. If other people are like, I'm done with the Democratic Party, period, that's fine. I'm not going to tell people what to do. But like where I knew, I mean, besides the COVID stuff, which I think Jimmy has been really irresponsible with, where I knew Jimmy was just full of shit was after a white supremacist drove to Buffalo and shot up 10 black people to death. Jimmy like found a way to blame it on the Azov battalion in Ukraine. And like, basically because the shooter in his manifesto had the black sun symbol, which is not unique to the Azov battalion in Ukraine. It's a neo-Nazi symbol like used around the world, that Jimmy and others like him, like instead of focusing on that, like a white supremacist just shot up 10 black people, which is there's a growing white supremacist movement in this country. He made it about like, oh, we're funding Nazis in Ukraine. Like, it was just so absurd and nonsensical. And you could always tell with these people, like, oh, they're so aghast and angry that we're funding Nazis in Ukraine, but somehow they never seem to cover the rising threat of actual Nazis in the United States and the growing threat of anti-Semitism in the United States, which is there's growing hate crimes based on anti-Semitism. And they seem to ignore like straight up white supremacists in the Republican Party. So if you don't have core principles and you're only focused on these things when it's about the Democratic Party, but you're going to completely ignore the right wing, then I can't take you seriously. And I don't think I think you're playing to an audience, because on YouTube in particular, there's a much bigger audience out there of right wingers. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying never try to speak to right wingers or never try to convince them to come over to you. But I don't think that's what he's doing. I certainly don't think that's what the Jackson Hinkles of the world are doing. when Jackson Hinkle in particular, I mean, it's just bullshit after bullshit. Like Russia bombs them all in Ukraine. Oh, it's a false flag. It was Ukraine who bombed their own mall. Pretending that Putin's not bombing civilian targets, pretending that Putin actually invaded Ukraine to denazify it, which is a joke. So yeah, I don't, people could watch whoever they want. And I also think, to be honest with you, I've seen it like traveling and being on the ground. I think the progressive movement in this country is very deflated. A lot of that has to do with Bernie and the squad, in my opinion, kind of going along to get along and not really agitating against Biden and the Democrats like they said they would. But I also think a lot of it has to do, frankly, with people like Jimmy Dore, who basically, because Bernie dropped out, endorsed Biden, because Bernie's not going scorched earth at Biden enough to their liking. Basically, they said, all right, they're all frauds, they're all cowards, they're all sellouts. There's no such thing as nuance. And, let's cancel everyone and everyone's a sellout. That tends to deflate people to then not do anything. So, for example, when people like Jimmy make it seem like, oh, Nina Turner's a sellout because she's running as a Democrat for Congress, even though she couldn't run as anything else and even have a chance to win in that area. And she's not running in Cleveland against Biden and how bad the Democrats are, even though that's the bluest city in the state of Ohio. And that city likes Joe Biden and voted for him overwhelmingly. Like when you have people basically saying it's all or nothing and there's no such thing as nuance, and you're either breathing the fire that I breathe or you're a sellout. Yeah, you're going to deflate people. You're going to convince people who were formerly like progressives on the Bernie wave and were actually doing things like volunteering for campaigns or knocking on doors or donating to check out. And I don't think it's all his fault because, again, I think Bernie left his movement. I don't think Bernie's been activating his movement to do anything because Bernie's basically been putting duct tape over his mouth. Bernie's basically not agitated at all against Biden. He didn't challenge Biden when Biden refused to do the $15 minimum wage, citing the parliamentarian. He didn't challenge Biden when Biden abandoned the public option. Bernie was never willing to tank any legislation by not voting for it. So there are like real criticisms of Bernie. I think AOC is more interested in magazine covers and celebrity than doing anything. I think other members of the squad have not been fighting or agitating the way they said they were. So there's certainly politicians to criticize. But to me, I don't think it's effective if you actually want to change anything to just create this black or white picture of politics that if Bernie or these people aren't doing it exactly the way we want, they're cowards and sellouts and we should cancel them. I also think actions speak louder than words. I believe that personally and professionally. So don't tell me you're a leftist and you're the real leftist, quote unquote, when you barely are covering the union movement in this country. Don't tell me you're a leftist and you're the real leftist if you barely have covered the worker strikes in this country. Do not tell me you're a leftist if you have barely covered the growth of tenants unions in this country. There are tenants unions popping up all over the country. How do I know he's not covered it? Jimmy and a lot of these other so-called leftists, because I have, and I've been out there. Colin and I went to cover the John Deere strikes in Iowa and Illinois last fall. We froze our fucking ass off. We went up to Buffalo to cover the Starbucks workers trying to unionize before they won, before that historic victory. I was at the Staten Island warehouse covering Chris Smalls and the Staten Island workers organizing for a year before they won. I went out there 7 or 8 times. And by the way, it doesn't mean you have to go out and cover these things like on the ground. But I don't know. I think people like Jimmy and others, they could invite workers on their show, right? They could promote their union campaigns, right? They could tell people how to get involved to help these workers. I don't see any of that. Maybe a video once in a blue moon. So,
well, he has Chris Smalls on.
Yeah, a few times maybe. But Do you see Jimmy, these other so-called leftists covering the Amazon workers trying to organize, the Trader Joe's workers, when Starbucks workers have been on strike, 10-inch unions? You see that a lot? If you do, please send it to me, because I don't. I mean,
Well, one person that I think universally creditable is Chris Hedges.
Yeah, I love Chris Hedges. Yeah, I think he's great.
He's still, not that I'm trying to, sounds like I'm promoting Jimmy Dore. I'm not, but he still does have a lot of credible guests on his show, like Chris Hedges. He had on Ralph Nader last week, and nobody can criticize Ralph Nader.
Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly, I don't watch him that much anymore, because the stuff I have watched is just, he's not who he used to be. I mean, I was friends with Jimmy when I was at the Young Turks. I could tell you through private conversations I had with him at the Young Turks, he's just night and a different person. Because when I knew him at the Young Turks, he actually did have like some nuance. He was not like everything's black or white. I think he saw that there is a big audience out there that is disenchanted with progressives. I think he saw that there were a lot of people who first got involved because of Bernie, like young people, older people who were like checked out from politics for a while, but got re-energized by Bernie. I think that he saw that a lot of them were, really thought that we could fucking topple this system like right away or very quickly. And when they realized, oh, that might not happen right away, and this might take longer, I think he capitalized on it and preyed on people's disappointment and anger, and channeled their anger, not to help them actually use their anger in an effective way, but just to cancel everyone. I mean, if you watch Jimmy for the last year or two, all he's done is like go on a cancellation tour, and just, it's almost like Trump-like, Mike from the Humanist Report, fraud, sellout, he's canceled. David Dole from the Rational National, he's not a real leftist. Kyle Kalinske, because he didn't, suck my dick 100% when I was in a fight with the Young Turks, he's a fake leftist. I think he's even gone after Breaking Points. They're not real left. Crystal's not a real leftist. Well, I mean, if people want to live on an island alone with Jimmy Dore and basically not actually achieve anything for the next 10 to 20 years, they could do that. But to me, I don't know. Call me old-fashioned. I've been doing this for 7 years. I never thought, and I got caught up in Bernie just as a person. I mean, I'm a journalist, but I'm a human too, right? I mean, I was at these rallies in 2016. I couldn't avoid feeling what everyone else felt, the energy. This was something special was going on. It almost felt like a political version of Woodstock, the love and the hope and the excitement. Of course, there's going to be anger when that crashes and burn. Of course, there's going to be frustration and disappointment when we don't get to where we wanted to go. But to me, the intellectually honest response to that and Bernie losing in 2020 would have been this. You want to know something? Before Bernie Sanders, there was no fucking progressive movement in this country. There wasn't. There was progressive people, but there was no organized progressive movement. There was Occupy Wall Street in 2011. That was a big thing, and then it dissipated. So before Bernie Sanders, it would have been laughable to even think a progressive politician could even compete in a Democratic primary. I mean, the last progressive that ever had a shot presidentially, we thought, was George McGovern in 1972. So a lot of people, I think, because they first entered politics, young people primarily, they got caught up in revolution and we could topple this system right away. But that's just not how things work. And I'm not telling you to accept incrementalism. I'm telling you this system did not get so corrupted overnight. So it was never going to get uncorrupted in like 2-3 years. And probably even if Bernie Sanders was fucking president, it would not be uncorrupted. That's not going to happen through one president or a few people in Congress. So my bottom line here is the intellectual response and how I view things is what we should have done after 2020 is said, you want to know something? We were literally, if you want to think about it in terms of football, we were just on the 5-yard line of an actual progressive winning the Democratic nomination for president. If Bernie made a lot of mistakes, I think he made key mistakes, which is why he lost. But He was close to clinching the Democratic nomination. He won Iowa. He won New Hampshire. He crushed in Nevada. He was always going to lose South Carolina, but he was close. There was a short period where he had all the momentum. So to respond to that, and then him losing and dropping out, and obviously supporting Biden with, he's canceled, he's a fraud, he's a coward, he abandoned his movement. No, you learn from the mistakes that he made, and there were plenty, and you say, we need to build on this. He literally was very close, if not for a few mistakes, I think, to winning the Democratic nomination. And if he won the Democratic nomination, I think he would have beat Trump by a significant margin, way more than Biden did. But instead of responding that way, people like Jimmy responded by trying to push a whole generation of progressives to just check out, cancel Bernie, cancel everything. And he tried to push people to a fake political party called Movement for a People's Party that might as well be Movement for a Jimmy's Party, because that's all they do. So I don't think everything is Jimmy Dore's fault. Don't get it twisted. But I do think that when you have so many people that have been hoodwinked into thinking, oh, the answer is just burn down the Democratic Party. And if we do that, we'll get to the promised land. Okay, what then? And to me, it's not about Dem enter or Dem exit. I don't really give a shit. If people want to Dem enter or people want to Dem exit, I'm a journalist. That's not my job to tell you what political strategy to use. But my point is, what is the actual, if people are going to like follow the Jimmys of the world and just, I'm done. If they're running as a Democrat, I'm not voting for them. What's the answer? What is his plan to build an actual third party that can compete? I asked Nick Brana a long time ago when I interviewed him, when I still thought he was somewhat reputable, what's your plan to get on ballots? Because to me, that was always the biggest challenge. What is your plan to get on ballots? Because it's very hard as a new third party to get on ballots. He gave me a bullshit answer. If somebody was if people like Jimmy were actually serious about building a third party, why would you try to start from scratch when the Green Party exists? They could have tried to work within the Green Party or take over the Green Party. So I could go on forever, but I think that as Steve Grumbine and I talk about a lot, and unfortunately Steve has the flu, so he can't join us tonight on our election show. But as Steve Grumbine and I talk about a lot, I don't think structural change. What I mean by structural change is Medicare for all, free public college, a $25 minimum wage. Forget a $15 minimum wage. That's conservative at this point. I don't think that stuff is going to come through electoral politics directly, through voting for this person for president or these people for Congress. That doesn't mean don't vote. I mean, I think vote, whether it's for a Democrat, third party. Like, I don't think you should just say, I'm not going to vote. But I think structural change is going to come through actual movements, actual organizing. I've been saying forever, I'll keep covering these protests, but at a certain point, if we keep protesting, whether it's Black Lives Matter, Dreamers, Sunrise Movement, healthcare, student loan protesters, if we keep circling the same fucking blocks, chanting the same things over and over again, year after year, it's not doing anything. But if we actually start organizing economic protest with mutual aid attached to it, if we start organizing locally economic protests of big box retailers, local banks, local grocery stores, preferably Amazon, not for the first day of the month, but for longer. That is how you force politicians to actually change things, because you put the pressure on the economic elites. You put the pressure on the CEOs, the Jeff Bezoses, the McDonald's CEO, the Bank of America CEO. When you organize economically, and this is what the Yellow Vest movement was doing in France, you get real concessions. So I don't see any calls for that in the progressive movement. A bunch of a bunch of YouTubers holding general strike summits. That's great. It's good to have the conversation, but that's not actually organizing anything. So yeah, sorry, I was a little long-winded there, but that's what I think. I gotta move on to the next person though. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Humorous. You gotta unmute your mic.
Yeah, I know.
Hey there.
By listening to you on this platform, which actually sucks. Actually, when you first started talking, you used some kind of a link that didn't have background noise. You could still watch YouTube. You could do lots of things. Call in actually sucks as a platform to use. But I digress. How you doing, old friend?
I'm doing well. I am a brand new uncle again. My my brother's wife just gave birth, so I'm excited about that.
I heard.
I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book, so that's exciting.
Oh, I know. I try to support it in every way I can.
Thank you, man. And thank you very much, as always. You've been really helpful with your support.
Hey, it's all cool, bro. Don't worry about it. I believe in what you do. You know, I don't understand why this country doesn't get one fact that people are the economy, not what they consider money. I just don't get it.
Because they have a 24/7 media propaganda system that makes the people fucking stupid and ignorant. That's why.
Oh, I believe that. I also believe that our children have been totally dumbed down by actually not funding education.
Yep. It's another one. That is another one.
It's amazing. I watch Fox News. I watch MSNBC. Do you know the only difference I see between those two corporate media stations?
Fox News has more blondes.
No. Fox News spreads lies and propaganda, and then MSNBC actually covers up and omits the truth about that propaganda.
You know, that's actually a great way of putting it. That's a great way of putting it. Yep.
That's actually what's happening. I mean, if anybody ever watched Fox and then went to MSNBC a half an hour later, one is lying and spreading propaganda. The other one is literally covering up propaganda and omitting the truth.
Yep. I think MSNBC, I mean, Fox is terrible. I mean, it pushes Republican propaganda. It pushes culture war bullshit.
There is no such thing, my friend, as Republican.
Right. Conservative propaganda.
No such thing as conservative.
Okay.
You're on the wrong trail there, my friend. There is only the GOP and the Democratic Party.
Right. It's very true.
The GOP is not Republican. Okay? Everyone needs to understand that. The GOP started the first Civil War. The GOP tried to start the second one on January 6th. So when everybody says Republicans and Democrats, they're absolutely wrong. Because what everyone understands as the Democratic Party is literally the Republican Party of yesteryear. And they had an adversary. It was called GOP.
Right. It's true.
You know what's funny, Jordan? I live in a fascist country called Florida. We have a neighboring country. It's called the United States. But unfortunately, the country of Florida and the country of Texas and everything in between has infected the country, our neighboring country, the United States, with their evil and bullshit.
Yeah. And I think also when you look at, and I think the interviews Lewis did with some of these Trump supporters really showed it. You have so many people that part of it is education, but the other part of it is when people are being fed 24/7 propaganda from the media they consume, from the people around them who are consuming the same media, it creates this feedback loop of people not even understanding what their own interests are. So, the people who Lewis interviewed at the Trump rally who are so upset about inflation and economy and, higher prices, this and that, they don't even realize that a huge reason we have the inflation problem that we have right now, yes, is corporations price gouging, but it's also the supply chain problem. Why do we have such a supply chain problem during COVID? Because the Republicans that they are now supporting, along with the Democrats, sold all of American manufacturing to China. Let me repeat. The politicians, the Republican Party, that they somehow are being fed propaganda is going to help lower inflation or, bring their jobs back. That was Trump's big one. I'm bringing the factory jobs back. Literally allowed multinational corporate conglomerates and banks write NAFTA and other trade deals that sold America's industrial revolution and our manufacturing capacity to other countries, so that under the guise of globalization, and so we could have cheaper goods. That's why we didn't have enough capacity to make masks here, and we didn't have enough ventilators here, and we didn't have name your fucking thing that we depend on, whether it's in the food industry or elsewhere, that we depend on from China, Mexico, and other countries. And I'm not knocking China, Mexico, and other countries because, their people need jobs too. And unfortunately, a lot of their people are working, slave wages to produce goods for Americans. But this is what the mix of not a good education, but also people being fed just tribalism and partisan bullshit and team blue or team red. They don't even understand that the very people that they're out there supporting, like Trump, were supportive of all these things. I mean, Trump, all his products and shit that he sells, he makes it in China. Same thing with Dr. Oz. I'm sure Democrats too. That's why we have a supply chain crisis, because we don't fucking make things here anymore. You remember when Trump, they pushed in Wisconsin the whole Foxconn thing, which actually was a con, that they were going to build this brand new factory in Wisconsin for making state-of-the-art, I think it was glass TV screens or something like that. And it's going to create 15,000 jobs. And we need to give this Chinese corporation tax breaks. And we need to give the state of Wisconsin tax breaks. How many jobs has Foxconn created? None. So it's very upsetting, whether I'm on the ground or I'm just watching Lewis on the ground, to see people time and time again. It's not only that they're voting against their own interests. They have no idea what those interests are. And I blame a lot of that on Bill Clinton, frankly. If people, it's not a sexy topic, but Bill Clinton signed the 1996 Telecommunications Act. That helped consolidate media companies so that Rupert Murdoch could own more of the media, and Comcast can own more of the media, and Viacom could own more of the media. Right now, you have 6 multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates that own the entire media system. It basically did away with the fairness doctrine, which dictated that if you're going to have 5 minutes of a Republican on, you need 5 minutes of a liberal on. I think that should include then 5 minutes for an actual progressive on. I mean, I could go on and on, but the bottom line is people in this country are stupid and don't even know that they're being screwed from both sides. And yeah, the only answer to that is a counter to the corporate media propaganda system. That's why I created Status Coup, to counter both the corporate echo chamber on MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, to counter it. Also, the right. It's also very hard to do that independently if you're not taking corporate money and you have every fucking outlet, every platform you're on suppressing us. YouTube suppresses us. Twitter suppresses. I mean, I'm suppressed everywhere. But anyway, sorry, I went on a tangent there.
No, bro. I actually like your tangents.
My wife does. My wife doesn't.
They're actually precise. They're actually precise and to the point.
Thank you.
There's no bullshit involved. Why wouldn't anybody understand that about you?
Well, if people, and that's why, like, honestly, I don't pay a lot of attention to people who are like, "Oh, Jordan's simping for the Democratic Party." This is the kind of pea brain.
You are not a fucking Democrat. You're not even a Republican. I don't even know what you are.
I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. I voted for some third-party candidates in New York for local elections. I have voted for Democrats as well. I've never voted for a Republican. So, like, I don't know if that makes me a criminal that I've voted based on the election, based on the circumstances. I did vote for Biden in 2020. I'm not going to apologize for it, and I don't regret it. And and some people don't like that. And you want to know what? I voted for Biden, and I explained why I voted for Biden back then. I never told anyone else who to vote for the exact reason of what we're seeing right fucking now in this country. I saw, because I actually was on the road. I wasn't just tweeting or hanging out in my mansion in LA like Jimmy. I was on the road. I saw directly at Trump rallies, because I covered them in 2016 and I covered them in 2020. There was an evolution from 2016 to more of a, yes, it was hateful, but in my view, more of a carnival in 2016 to 2020, which to me had tinges of fascism. To me, covering Trump in 2020 at these rallies, I do not think he was joking that he would try to serve more than 2 terms. I don't think Trump was joking about that. 2, when you're at a Trump rally and they have on the projector OANN, which makes Fox News look responsible. That's that batshit right-wing channel that was pushing Trump's Stop the Steal bullshit. And when you have Trump at these rallies talking about we need to reinstitute patriotic education, and we need to be a lot more restrictive on the types of people we allow in this country. And we need for police, not be so gentle with people. I would rather deal with the neoliberal corporate Democrat, which is not great. They are warmongers. They do support corporate fascism, but I'd rather deal with that than straight up fascism. And for those that have been fucking, their brains have become lizard brain because of the Jimmy Dore mentality, if they think that makes me a sellout, then go fuck yourself. Because I am not going to look the other way to growing white supremacy, growing violent conspiracy movements. And I'm not going to look the other way when I believe a candidate literally wants to be a dictator. I wouldn't look the way if that candidate was a Democrat. So why would I look the other way if that candidate was a Republican? That doesn't mean you support Joe Biden or you support the Democratic Party. That means you're a grown-up adult who could see the bigger picture. What has disappointed me is that we have not had Bernie and the progressives in Congress fight Biden aggressively enough. But if anyone, people could vote however they want. But if anyone actually believes that Jimmy and these other people are leftists when they're literally ignoring all the things I just talked about, then I don't know what to tell you.
Bro, I agree with everything you say. Every single damn thing that you just spouted is actually true. That's the only reason I support your damn channel. It doesn't matter your beliefs, your ideology. You just simply tell everyone this is what's going on.
Right. Like, if you think, like, literally to the common sense person, what do you think is worse? AOC doing magazine covers and not actually delivering on the promise to bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party? Or Marjorie Taylor Greene standing up at a Trump rally saying, the killings have begun, the Democrats are coming to kill you? If you genuinely think that the greater threat is AOC basically, being a younger version of Pelosi, more interested in doing magazine covers than quote unquote bringing the ruckus to the Democratic Party, versus literally fascists standing up saying we are a Christian nationalist country, or we should be a country of Christian nationalists, and the killings are starting, and the Democrats are coming to kill you. Or if you genuinely believe that, like, the bigger danger or the bigger threat is like Bernie Sanders, I don't know, not fighting hard enough against Biden, versus, I don't know, like literally this fucking development of all these candidates are saying, yeah, I'll accept the election results if I win. If not, yeah, I'm going to send the bat signal. Maybe we need to get a little violent here. That doesn't mean like completely ignore Bernie and the squad and never criticize them. That doesn't mean, hey, I said, I don't understand all these people complaining about Bernie and the squad. Why don't you organize protests? I'd come cover it. I covered a protest outside AOC's office last summer. I think MPP threw it. It was very badly organized. Barely anyone showed up, but I was the only journalist there that covered it. So I don't have a problem criticizing Democrats or the progressives. But if that's all you do and you ignore all this other shit and you're ignoring, I mean, Jimmy, it's disgusting. Literally, this guy, Paul Pelosi, sure, he's corrupt. Sure, Nancy Pelosi is corrupt. But can we all are we at the level now that we can't just straight up condemn an 82-year-old being beaten to death to an inch of his life by a hammer, by a violent MAGA guy? Jimmy was fucking pushing conspiracy theories that it was, we're just asking questions. We can't believe what the police are saying. He totally ignored that this guy believed every fucking Trump MAGA conspiracy theory in the books. I mean, all you had to do was look at this guy's blogs posting to see that. And then was giggling and entertaining conspiracies that, it was really like a gay lovers quarrel that went bad. Like, yeah, if we're at the point now where we're so Democrats are evil that we can't even just objectively say this is dangerous, even if it's Nancy Pelosi's husband, I mean, I think you could do two things at once and say, I don't like Nancy Pelosi. I think she's corrupt, but I don't think it's okay that her husband was violently attacked, that we should probably cover and really cover this really dangerous trend of conspiracy theories turning violent. Again, this guy was an election denier. He was a Holocaust denier. He was a COVID conspiracy theorist. And you have people like Jimmy and other channels like doing videos kind of giggling about it. And we're just asking questions. We're just asking questions. Same thing with Glenn Greenwald. He went on fucking Tucker Carlson and said, you have to be skeptical by default of any claim ever made by the government or whatever. So we should just by default be skeptical that Paul Pelosi, we should just be skeptical because it's the Democratic Party or the media telling you that he was attacked by a MAGA conspiracy theorist, and because it's the Democrats, we should entertain that it might be something else. I'm as skeptical as they come, but I'm also not an idiot. So anyway, I could go on forever, but I just think it's really sad when you have these so-called leftists pushing conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. And yeah, I think really radicalizing good people, because I think there's a lot of good people that listen to Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy and are being manipulated into thinking this way. And it's unfortunate.
My friend, you are so correct. Seriously, I would love to sit down, have a bottle of the most finest whiskey, and have shots with you for a couple hours.
I'd love to do it for a full day.
I mean, it's amazing how your mind actually sees the whole picture. I mean, it amazes me. I've been seeing this shit for 60 years. My parents, even though it wasn't called MMT at the time, they knew that what was going on was breaking America. They knew it. They told me about it. And I grew up believing for 30 years longer than you've been alive that everything that you say is true.
Well, you want to know something? And then I got to go. I used to be like, before I started doing this, before I started reporting, I used to be kind of like your average person who lives on the East Coast or the West Coast. You know, I used to think Democrats good, Republicans bad. I watched MSNBC like religiously in the 2000s. I loved Keith Olbermann when he was doing his long rants against George W. Bush. I was naive about the Democratic Party. Like, I didn't really follow like money in politics. I didn't know how bought off they were. So like when I first started paying attention to politics, I was pretty much as, team blue as you could get. Not because I'm an idiot, but it's just like you watch the media, and if you don't look deeper into things and you are disconnected, because like I wasn't out in the country talking to people before I started doing this, you just believe kind of the marketing, like Republicans bad, Democrats good, or Republicans good, Democrats bad, But I had the fortune of going out into the country starting in 2016. And I've been to, at this point, probably 30 to 35 states. I've been to more cities than that. I've seen a lot of shit. I've seen a lot of shit that honestly you would not even believe is happening in third world countries, much less here. I mean, I have sat on front porches and talked to kids who no longer can recite the alphabet in Flint. And I've talked to kids who are badly physically damaged from that water. I have spoken with Native Americans at Standing Rock off camera and had conversations that just shocked me to the core, just about their whole world and the way they grew up. That puts everything else into perspective. Every fucking complaint any white person would ever have would go out the window if you would ever speak with a Native American, and have a deep conversation to learn just how bad and the oppression. I've been everywhere. I've been to the western part of Texas, interviewing ranchers who fucking had a Dick Cheney shirt on. I mean, I have done so many reporting trips, just going out and talking to people. It's not to say that other people on YouTube's opinions don't matter or aren't valid because they don't do that or they don't go on the ground. But my knowledge and my perspective comes from actually going out there and seeing. Think about, to all of you watching right now or listening, your idea of how corrupt this country is and what you think you know about how corrupt this country is. Trust me, it's a lot worse than you know or think. Because that's how I kind of, all that was stripped away from me in terms of like just thinking the Democrats were good and the Republicans bad, or all that went away when I went on the road and I saw All of this shit is happening in places where Democrats have control, in places where Republicans run. The shit I learned about how corporations were basically ruling these states, and nonprofit foundations that you think are charitable and benevolent are actually fucking run by the biggest bloodsuckers you could imagine. And nonprofit organizations are literally partially behind things like the Flint water crisis and cover up, which will be discussed and reported on in my book. And you hear about these, you learn about like things like bond deals, that when people hear about a bond deal, their fucking eyes gloss over. And they, you know, they don't even want to hear it. How bond deals have destroyed certain parts of this country. And you go at Standing Rock and you learn about, I mean, just a stunning amount of corruption in the state of North Dakota, and how they just openly are racist against the Native Americans. No subtleties. I mean, I say all this to basically say, like, my perspective comes and my nuance comes, where I don't just view things totally black or white, from seeing shit that you have not. Not because I'm better, just because I've had the fortune to go out, thanks to the viewers, and cover things. So this country, it wasn't always this way. Sure, there's always been corruption. Every country has that. But the government was not always completely bought. That is why in the 1940s through maybe the mid-70s, those periods were in American history, the times of the most economic equality. Not for black people, mostly for white people. But we had the most economic equality. And the country then was corrupted for a variety of reasons. Supreme Court decisions, trade deals, racist laws against black people and brown people and indigenous people. But to me, listen, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. We're not getting structural change in this country overnight. It's not going to come through one president. It's not going to come through one group of electing progressives. It's not going to come from one successful big union like Starbucks or Amazon workers. It's not going to come from one or two successful worker strikes. It's going to come through sustained, let me repeat, sustained, persistent, working, organizing, and workers coming together and fighting back. It's not going to come if people just decide to check out and declare everyone sellouts and cowards. And if the left just spends the next 5 to 10 years fighting amongst each other, it's not going to come with that mindset. So anyway, I got to run, Humorous. I really appreciate your support.
All right, my friend.
And I'm going to take you up on that whiskey one day. You know I like whiskey.
Would truly be fun, bro. You have no idea. Even as smart and intelligent and truthful as you are, you have no idea of the mind insanity.
I'd love to pick your brain and learn about it. So, all right, man.
You have a great day, my friend. Bye-bye.
You too. I'm going to try to take one or two more, and then I got to go. Jay, you're up. You there, Jay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. You kind of breaking up.
Better. Okay. Can you hear me now, possibly?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just have like my AirPods in. I'm not too sure if that's like making a disruption. But anyway, so you know, I just wanted to say, you know, I really appreciate your coverage throughout the years. I've been following you since 2016, when you were like on the Young Turks and all. And you know, just to give you like my perspective, I'm 28 years old. I live in San Diego, California, and but I'm originally from Indiana, and I'm from like Northwest Indiana, like by East Chicago, where you actually covered a story there,
Yep.
and which I actually have family that a lot of family of mine has grown up in that area, that community specifically. Not exactly in that neighborhood where that specific story was, but just that entire area has experienced environmental racism throughout the years or throughout decades, and I just really appreciate you shedding light on that.
Yeah.
Just back from then.
If people
But
if people don't know what he's talking about, a couple years ago, I was in Chicago, like Chicago, and a viewer actually, when I was at the Young Turks, reached out to me and told me about this. I wouldn't call it like exactly like Flint, but basically like a city in East Chicago, Indiana, which is about like 45 minutes from Chicago. That in the 60s they built on top of this low income community. They built a lead smelting plant basically on top of the community. And over the years in this community, it was called the West Calumet Complex, and it's a government housing authority, and probably like 99% African American residents. Just the soil had like 200 times the amount of lead allowed that children were playing in. The water had lead. Me just being there for like an hour, I could barely breathe through my nose because of the lead. And the local government, the EPA, covered up basically for decades. And you had high cancer rates in that area. When I was there, the EPA said, no, this isn't like Flint. The water's fine. Like, I think 2 months later, it came out that the water was not fine. And that's just one area. I mean, there's a whole lot of places around the country that have had basically corporations build or dump on Black communities, on brown communities, definitely on Native communities, now poor white communities. So that's what he was talking about in Indiana. But go ahead.
yes, and that's like the type of reporting that I feel like we need, and just from an independent outlet like you have with Status Coup, it gives you the freedom, the power of your viewers to go out and do the stories that you want, and not based on any type of headlighting story or like what Kanye West said next. You know what I mean? It's just something that gives you a real perspective of what the actual working class is experiencing, and what millions of people share the same experiences. And that leads me to like what I kind of wanted to talk about in a way, and kind of like hear your perspective on it. And with today being election day, the midterms, and what we're seeing is coming down to voter turnout, right? And then what a midterm election is known for is poor voter turnout for mostly Democrats, and Republicans are always consistent with their voter turnout. And I believe, like, with the way just how the media and also the internet has utilized propaganda, the Republican Party has utilized these platforms to push their narrative, to continue to put us down this capitalist dystopia, and where everybody, it feels like the economy's strong, whatever, but then you go out and you see real reporting like yourself, and people are struggling out there, and if you talk to normal people, they are, and part of like what I feel like the importance of like what you're doing, and how that relates to like voter turnout and stuff, with like the internet. Like, I believe we had a revolution in the 2010s, and that was the revolution of the smartphone, right? People were able to get online, create a Facebook account, create accounts where, their flip phone turned into actual smartphone, right? And it allowed people to get onto the internet and explore and learn new information, right? And it was very revolutionary. And I feel like we seen that come to light in 2016, where people are like, you know what, like, the past generations, especially younger people like myself, we notice like, hey, like we are having projected worse outcomes than our parents before, generations before, and there's no signs of it ever getting better, and I feel like that was like a special time in a way during the for the internet, because it wasn't necessarily infiltrated completely by big money interests, or like where things have been completely monetized, like YouTube channels were completely monetized, where people were able to just like not get caught in the algorithm is basically what I'm saying. And I feel like we're where we're heading now in the age of the internet is where our cell phones are the old newspaper that people would pick up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like what you see is what you get. And but the thing is, in the day and age of the algorithm, people are just getting fed the information that they already want to see,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that's where the times are a little scary, right? And we're obviously seeing that with like candidates like Marjorie Taylor Greene, or she's actually in power, right? She actually has power, and those are stuff that were started through QAnon type of rhetoric or whatever, that those type of conspiracies, and those were those supporters that pushed like a candidate like Taylor Marjorie, or so my point is, I kind of like wanted to get your perspective on like where we're headed in the internet age, in terms of how we always relied on like the young people to that was our hope, right? And like where we could see change. And I feel like is because we've had the power of the internet, but now, and I know the internet's starting to change, and where it's become, like I was saying, you're getting caught in an algorithm where you're just kind of you're getting fed whatever propaganda that is pushed through, and so I just believe that it is dangerous times in terms of how, and I feel like today is going to be a good example of the midterm elections of like where we're headed as a country, and like how somebody like Donald Trump is still so relevant, and as bad as he is in a way, we've seen him for 6+ years now, and he hasn't changed, and his base is still there, and so and I know I've gone on a little tangent in a way, but I just basically, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about, and like the role that you feel like you need to play in terms of being able to combat this type of like propaganda, where people are just getting caught into these algorithms, and now at a very young age, where we might not be able to rely on the youngest generation of voters,
right?
In a way. So
I wish I had a better answer, but I don't think it's too hopeful. I'll just give one example. The people with the biggest platforms. Let's use Joe Rogan, for example. Joe Rogan, I think it was the other day, a clip came out with him and Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is, he's a right winger or libertarian. I don't know how he classifies himself. He has single-handedly pushed the anti-trans campaign more than any other conservative with a major audience. I think he's got over 1 million followers. He pushed that Boston Children's Hospital is mutilating children's bodies and doing gender affirming care to kids as young as 12, which was not true. It led to death threats happening to doctors and nurses at the Boston Children's Hospital. It led to people showing up there and threatening staff there. So Joe Rogan had Matt Walsh on the other day. Now, you could debate whether to give platforms to some of these people, but putting that aside, Joe Rogan, who I assume is not intentionally trying to, put out false stuff. But the bottom line is Joe Rogan is not a journalist. Joe Rogan is a UFC guy who, for whatever reason, has, the biggest podcast audience in the world, or at least in America. Joe Rogan routinely has people on that push misinformation, lies, stuff out of context or with half context. And either Joe Rogan is not, I don't think he's stupid, but he's either not well read enough or knows politics well enough to be able to push back, or he just chooses not to, right? So when you have 11 million people who are hearing a lot of right wingers, a lot of extremists spew misinformation and lies, and the host either isn't willing or just isn't capable of effectively pushing back or correcting them, that's cancerous for discourse, because people just believe it because they trust Joe Rogan. And an example is, and this is, in this case, this is a good example, like a positive one. This guy, Matt Walsh, was on the other day. Again, he's led the anti-trans campaign and, we're mutilating children's body and all this shit. So he just casually said that there's been millions of teenagers on puberty blockers and taking these puberty blockers. It's not true. There's no facts that support that, but he just casually said it. Joe Rogan did not challenge him. Probably because Joe Rogan, how would Joe Rogan know if that's true or not, right? To Joe Rogan's producer's credit, I guess Joe Rogan's producer kind of got in his ear or something, or came on the show. I don't know. But Joe Rogan's producer interjected and said, that's actually not true. I think it was like 4,000 or something. Teenagers took puberty blockers. Pretty sure 4,000 is slightly different than several million, right? But in this case, Joe Rogan's producer stepped in and corrected him. That is the exception to what generally goes on shows like Joe Rogan. Same thing with Jimmy Dore. Honestly, if I just did one show a week on Status Coup that literally corrected and debunked shit Jimmy Dore says, or somebody did a show every day just watching Jimmy Dore's live stream and correcting misinformation, A, you'd get a lot of clicks, but B, you'd have a lot of content because he constantly gets things wrong. And this was no secret to anyone working at the Young Turks. It was an open secret that he did no research for anything, never researched anything, and was continually saying things that were factually wrong. So, and this, by the way, this isn't just Joe Rogan or Jimmy Dore. It happens on CNN. It happens on MSNBC. It happens on Fox, where pundits, political, quote, experts, anchors just say shit that's not true. And there's no pushback and no correction. So when that is the media environment, and you have more and more people that are not actual journalists, but just because they have a following, suddenly are coined journalists, yeah, you're going to have a whole generation of people that are misinformed in ways that radicalize them. So I'm not somebody who, yes, that's true. Libs of TikTok organized most of those bomb threats. Well, you should look back, because Libs of TikTok and Matt Walsh were kind of working hand in hand on that, talking about the bomb threats to Boston Children's Hospital. But at the end of the day, I'm not somebody who believes that Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg should necessarily be the ones policing, quote, misinformation. Because when you allow Silicon Valley billionaires police misinformation, it will eventually cover all of us. And they'll start saying, I'm misinforming people during a general strike because they don't want, real information out there that can hurt the billionaire class. So when they police misinformation that might genuinely be misinformation, it's then going to splinter off and wrongly police and penalize people that are leftists. It happens with censorship too. But to be clear, there is a major misinformation problem. And it comes from a lot of people that have massive followings like Joe Rogan. And it's not always people. I don't think Joe Rogan wakes up and says, I can't wait to misinform people on this show. I just think Joe Rogan is a UFC guy who part of his charm is I'm just an every guy and I don't know everything and I'm going to try to learn. But I mean, Joe Rogan, for example, had, what's his face? The COVID guy who was the doctor who Jimmy, and all these other people rallied around, claiming he had the patent on mRNA and he created the mRNA vaccine, even though he didn't. And Joe Rogan had him on and didn't challenge him on anything. And how could Joe Rogan challenge him on anything? Joe Rogan's not equipped. He doesn't have the understanding, the medical understanding to challenge him. Crystal Ball, I thought, responded to that and said something very smart. Crystal Ball said, I would not have, I'm blanking on his name, Robert Malone, Dr. Malone. Crystal Ball said, I would not have him on, not only because I believe he is misinforming in many cases, but because I am not equipped to correct him. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to necessarily, I don't know how to totally understand the scientific analysis or these studies. But that's somebody like Crystal who is responsible. Somebody like Jimmy, who I promise you does not know how to read a medical study. And has literally misinformed his viewers either intentionally or just because he's an idiot. Time and time again on COVID. I mean, Jimmy went on Joe Rogan's show and cited a study in Mexico that taking ivermectin will prevent you from getting COVID. Complete bullshit. No basis in fact. Has been debunked over and over again. Jimmy just casually said it. Like, yeah, ivermectin will prevent you from getting COVID. And Joe Rogan, and I don't know if I don't remember Joe Rogan like forcefully pushing back on that. But the problem with that is people listen to Jimmy Dore and Joe Rogan and then make decisions like medical decisions that could literally kill them. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Make decisions about COVID and other things that could lead to life or death. So when you have a platform, you have to be super responsible, whether you're a commentator or a journalist, and say, I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know. And another problem is when you kind of confuse being anti-establishment with being anti-common sense. So for example, what people like Jimmy and others pushed out there was like, I'm against big pharma, so therefore I'm not going to ever believe anything coming from big pharma. Right? So I'm against big pharma because I'm, quote, anti-establishment. So if Pfizer or Moderna are coming out saying X, Y, and Z about the vaccines, it's bullshit because big pharma. Well, okay, so are you then, because big pharma makes Tylenol, do you believe we shouldn't take Tylenol? By the way, who do you think created ivermectin? Who do you think manufactures ivermectin? Merck created ivermectin. That's big pharma. By the way, if they did any research, they would know that the mRNA vaccine did not just develop in a year, but it was studied and trialed over 20 years. And the vaccines obviously don't do what we were originally fed. They're not stopping infection. But if you actually have look at data and you have read actual studies from actual medical experts, these vaccines, even though they're not totally effective, like polio or these other vaccines that stop you from getting it, they have saved millions of lives. That's just the objective truth. But because people like Jimmy believe they're being anti-establishment, and it's not just Jimmy, I'm just talking about the media in general, people who basically conflate being anti-establishment or anti-capitalism or anti-war. So, for example, there's a lot of, quote, people right now misleading people about Russia and Ukraine, citing, well, I'm anti-war. I'm anti-war. So I'm only going to focus on neo-Nazis or Nazis in the Azov battalion. But I'm not going to condemn Putin. I'm not going to condemn Russia for starting a war. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of misinformation that happens on the internet from digital media, from corporate media, because there's a lot of average people that have grifted their way to major audiences. And by the way, when I was at the Young Turks, they also were not big on doing any research. The Young Turks, when I was there, I don't know what they're doing now, was basically their meetings would their show meetings would consist of circulating articles for the Huffington Post, reading them on the show, and then giving their opinions about it with no research. And a lot of those articles for the Huffington Post had incorrect stuff too. Of course, we're all humans, so I'm going to get things wrong. Jimmy's going to get things wrong. People are going to get things wrong. The difference is, do you actually take the time to try and get things right? Like, I don't really talk that much about foreign policy because it's not what I cover, and I don't know enough about it. So I don't try to talk about things that I don't know enough about, because that's just being responsible. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about NATO, or, if I'm going to cover something, I'll try to have on people that I think know more than me and are coming from a good faith position. But I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on COVID. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the last 30 years of NATO. I am an expert on Flint. I am an expert on the union movement in this country right now. I know a lot about labor history. I know a lot about corruption. So anyway, that's my long-winded answer that I think misinformation is going to get worse, because I think the people pushing the misinformation either are intentionally pushing it or are so infatuated with the amount of views they're getting online and money they're making from those views. Hey, if I was getting 15,000 live viewers, I'd probably want to keep doing whatever I'm doing to get those 15,000 live viewers. But that's my answer.
Yeah.
So
and the misinformation, it correlates strongly with the culture war that we have going on right now, because everybody, as much as we have difference of opinion on like how we view things, right? We all mostly are in the same percentile, I guess you could say, of our income, and being a working class people, and the things that we rally behind, or the things that Republicans are really good at marketing themselves to rally their people behind, is the culture. And that's how they get a lot of these crossover voters too. It's reactionary, just getting like a lot of these crossover voters through what is going on right now, and how and attaching a lot of the culture stuff that people question, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to real economic things like that, a candidate will support, right? But they attach them being a part of like some type of you know, whatever culture thing that, you know, Republicans latch onto, you know, being, whether it's like the trans rights or something, you know, the abortion thing. Yeah, but you know, the main thing is pushing, and I remember reading this a while ago, but a part of one of the biggest strategies that like the 2016 Trump campaign did was to basically just cause dissent in the Democratic Party and just to in Hillary. They knew that there's a percentage of people that are not going to come out to vote for Trump, right? But if they could just get them to not believe in the Democratic Party and not show up, they know that their base of supporters are going to show up, and that's how they're going to win through voter turnout, right? And that putting propaganda and misinformation, it was particularly in the Michigan in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. You know, it was just ads and stuff just talking about Hillary Clinton, nothing necessarily pro-Trump, but it was just negative Hillary stuff. And that just causes people to not show up, you know, and therefore that's how a lot of these elections are won, you know, especially like a local level, you know. And so I just believe like it's hard to be vigilant in a way if and during these times if you like don't necessarily know how to navigate, you know, some of the propaganda or kind of see through it. You know, it's everybody's gullible in some type of way, you know, and we all have our cultural views and whatever background that we come from, right? And you know, I just believe that if you know, if we could rally together as a working class and just put the cultural views aside, you know, this is just me hopeful thinking, you know, but it's just the harsh reality is that I believe, you know, the Republican Party knows it, is their culture wars is what's fueling their fire in terms of being able to, and that's what you see as the rise of white nationalism, because that's the base of it, you know. And in a way it can be appealing to some people that don't necessarily have those beliefs of you know, it rubs them the wrong way when they or not rubs them the wrong way, but it's not everybody knows where they stand on how you feel about like a trans person in wrestling or something like that, right?
Right.
And so but that's like in a way an irrelevant conversation to what's an emergency issue in terms of like what people need today, you know.
But that's the secret.
In terms of,
that is the secret, and that's the con, making people think that the biggest the biggest threats and you know, issues we need to address is trans people, you know, trans women and swimming, you know, like, okay, yeah, I mean, that could be a that could be a discussion. Like I think there is valid reasons, you know, for women who are born women genetically, you know, to have concerns about a woman who, you know, was a born male but transitioned. I think that's fine, and you know, it's fine for some people to feel like. I have mixed views on that because I understand why birth women, you know, born that way might feel that it's unfair if you know, women who transition to become women, you know, and different testosterone levels and all that. But the con and the distraction is making that like a major political issue or voting concern. It's not, but they distract you. That's the right wing echo chamber distracts you. Same thing with critical race theory, which is literally not being taught in any school in America.
Exactly. Yep.
So listen, man, I got to go.
Yeah,
appreciate it. I am very sorry to the others who are waiting, but I didn't expect to be live this long, and I got to go do some things before our live stream tonight. So rain check for the guys that are waiting. Maybe I'll do a call in tomorrow with reacting to the election. So come back tomorrow. I just want to show two things that I think kind of show my point on why I think it's going to be chaotic tonight. Colin, do you have? I sent you two things. Number one, NBC News: a polling place in Louisiana, one about 20 minutes outside of New Orleans, had to be moved from one school to another after a bomb threat, according to John Tobler, the deputy secretary in Louisiana. So you got a bomb threat in Louisiana. Colin, if you got the second thing I just sent you. This is what I've been warning about for days and weeks that I thought was going to happen. Unfortunately, it seems like it's already happening. Trump just posted this on his Truth Social. The absentee ballot situation in Detroit is really bad. People are showing up to vote only to be told, sorry, you have already voted. This is happening in large numbers everywhere as well. Protest, protest, protest. So they're already stoking the stop the steal bullshit and conspiracy of widespread election fraud. And at the beginning of this live stream, I showed you the Rolling Stone article where Trump was already going to contest the election results. And what you're seeing, expect a lot more of that throughout the day. I don't think, save this recording, I do not think it's beyond out of the question that Dr. Oz will declare victory tonight, even if all the results are not in. I do not think it is beyond possibility that the same thing will happen in Arizona, where Blake Masters will declare victory, even though it hasn't been declared by any news outlet and it's too close to call. I do not think it's out of the question that Herschel Walker would do it in Georgia. So we'll cover it. Before I go, reminder, 7 o'clock Eastern, baby. 7 o'clock Eastern. We will be live on the ground and in the studio. We will have Lewis covering the Oz election night event near Philadelphia. We will have John Farina covering the John Fetterman event in Pittsburgh. And I will be holding it down in the studio, joined by Tina Desiree Berg, Ron Placone, Walker Bragman, and Kim Brown. So we'll be on the ground and in the studio. I don't know how long, definitely a couple hours with election results, kind of weeding through the chaos. So definitely put it in your calendar, 7 o'clock Eastern tonight. And make sure you're signed up for our text list. So you'll get a text message when we're live too. That's statuscoup.com/text, statuscoup.com/text. It should be a really good night either way. So definitely tune in at 7 o'clock Eastern. There's a lot of channels doing election night coverage. As far as I know, we're the only ones on the ground. So be there, 7 o'clock Eastern. Tell your friends, tell the neighbors, everybody. Oh, there's my dog. Couple more super chats. Renzo, $1.99. Thoughts on Ralph Nader saying to vote Dem? I feel like Ralph Nader's always said that ultimately, like to vote Dem in these national elections. So that doesn't surprise me. My thoughts, vote for whoever you want. I'm not, contrary to what others say, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I never have. But Ralph Nader, I don't think that's new. I think he's always said to vote Democrats for the national elections when he's not running, I should say. Carlos, $5. That's true. Your reporting is solid, but unlike you continue the false notion the DNC can be reformed. It can't. They are a right-wing party. I don't know where I said that the DNC or the Democrats can be reformed. I didn't say that. You might be interpreting that, but I never said that. So, okay. Nancy, 1999. I love the expanded Status Coup team. Lewis and John are doing a great job on the ground reporting. I'm looking forward to watching your election night tonight from San Francisco as I quarantine with COVID. I am vaxxed and boosted. Sorry to hear you're with COVID. It's spreading, even though the media is pretending it's over. I hope you're feeling okay and, have mild symptoms. But thanks for the super chat and thanks for watching. Det Nabul, $5. We vote with our dollars. Here's a vote for Status Coup. Woohoo! And here's the vote for 2024. I vote Mansion in the Parliamentarian. Das Boos Fleiss, €5.99. Glenn Greenwald sometimes comes on the Vanguard to talk about disagreements. I wonder if he would do the same with you. Sure would be interesting. I don't know. I've never asked him. Honestly, I don't really respect Glenn Greenwald anymore. So, I just don't. I think he's acting in bad faith. I think he's clearly trying to play to the right wing. I think that's his audience now. So I'm not really interested in talking to him. I give him credit for the reporting he has done in the past, but that doesn't give you perpetual, never criticize the person. So, I think if you watch Glenn enough on Tucker Carlson and you still respect him, we don't see the same thing. Chris Garrett, $5. The work that Status Coup does exposing corruption on both sides and debunking propaganda is invaluable. Support sustainable journalism as a member. Woohoo! And let me make sure I didn't miss any member signups before I go. All right, I got everything. Thank you very much. Colin, did I miss anything?
No, I think that was everything.
Colin, how fucking big is tonight's show going to be?
It took a while to fit it on the graphics, so pretty big.
I hope it all technically works. I'll try to fix my camera before. I don't know what the hell is wrong with my focus. We'll try to figure it out. We'll be live at 7 o'clock Eastern. I'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.